extension is really acceptable at the PIP joint unless they have it across the board. So if they have 5 to 10 degrees across the board, that's fine, but we don't expect to see hyperextension. That's a freak.
Okay.
Yeah. But you got it all the way across. If you had one finger that was doing that, then I would be putting you in an orthotic because that will lead to deformity later on. But that's just the way she is. We know she's a little bit of a freak. You're just a freak. But that's all right.
Freaks around here.
Freak a week.
She's like a mobile.
Interesting.
Now, the DIP joint, since we don't climb trees a lot and we don't wrestle cows and pull on things like we used to, we are losing range of motion in the DIP joint as a society, particularly as we get older. You just don't need it. Different books are going to have different ranges. 60 to 90 is normal. Like I said, when I was in school, I learned 90, 110, 90, and it stuck forever. And now I just go back and go, DIP is really 60 to 90. You want to look for consistency across the board. If the patient can do this, then as soon as I have measured the PIP joint, I can slide right down here and measure her DIP joint. Again, if I have an injury, then I'm going to want to pull down, block the PIP joint, and measure the DIP joint off of the block. Okay? Not looking for any hyperextension, just looking for flexion. Good? Yes.
You said the DIP was supposed to be 60 to 90, but on the side 70.
Yeah.
How much do we care?
Okay. 60 to 90. I don't care.
Okay, cool.
60 to 90, 70
I have
to
to
90.
double check on everything.
Yeah.
So.
As long as you're, if you know 90, 110, 90, and then you go, but
10,
DIP is
10,
commonly
20s and
60 or
50s.
70s normal, then you're going to be fine. On the board exam, they're not going to screw with you over 10 degrees.
Okay.
Because there's such a variation, and that's why on some of these I want you to, even on the, if they said is 170 degrees normal shoulder flexion, they won't ask you that.
Okay.
But if they did, if your CI did, then the answer is probably 170, 10 degrees is
Right.
this much. You're going to tell me that a patient's not normal because they're missing this much range? I mean, come on. So these are guidelines. Yes, they are norms, but don't get super hung up on them.
Okay.
Again, you can measure hyperextension. We do not expect any hyperextension at the DIP joint. All right, now this one gets just a tad trickier. Where did I do my long goniometer? Oh, okay. We've gone over flexion, we've gone over extension. Y'all, the books on this, I would encourage you not to even look at it. Because you have 2 different books that show you how to measure the thumb, and I think they're both different. I would love to have a research group that did some consistency testing on measurements and textbooks and instructions of the CMC joint, because the books just don't get it. This is the CMC joint, so your stationary arm, again, look at the skeleton and think about what makes sense. We're looking at the thumb's ability to move in this direction and the thumb's ability to move in this direction. Some people measure off of the ulna, and some people measure off the first metacarpal and the second metacarpal, and I'm going to show you why, the way I do it and why I think it makes sense this way. If I'm looking at flexion and extension, so I'm looking at a radius and a first metacarpal, that goes this way and this way. So to me, it makes sense to measure off of the radius. So the stationary arm lines up with the radius, the movable arm lines up with the joint, and the movable arm, the axis moves up with the joint, and the movable arm lines up with the first metacarpal. Put your hand down flat and look at your neighbor. Pick your goniometer up and put your goniometer in that same position. Now you want the thumb flexed all the way into the palm. And actually I'm showing you flexion here, but I'm going to talk about extension first.
Yeah.
don't even put it.
Oh my god, I can like spray my nose and then like 5 seconds later it's just right back.
If I line my axis up with the joint, my stationary arm up with the mid shaft of the radius, and my movable arm up with the first metacarpal, some of you are going to be at 0. But most of you are going to be, if you've got the thumb pulled all the way in, most of you are going to be at about 10 to 30 degrees because that's the position it sits, right? Look at the skeleton. It doesn't sit in a straight line. Some people do, but most people don't. So I'm starting at 20 degrees. Now what I want you to do is bring your thumb out as far as you can. So I move from 20 to 35. So what is her range of motion? 15 degrees. Some of your textbooks will say 70. The CMC joint moves
70.
nowhere close to 70 degrees.
hard to
If they
do it
say
yourself.
70 degrees, it's because they're not subtracting. Because your starting position for this is not likely to be 0. Make sense? Now,
Doing too many D's.
we just measured her extension, and I said it was 15 degrees. So now I'm going to measure flexion. When I measure flexion, I can have her turn over on her palm, and I can measure extension. I probably should have done both of them from the palmar surface, just for consistency. Bring your thumb in. But I'm in the same position again. Since I started extension at 20 degrees, what does my start position for flexion have to be? 20 degrees, because flexion and extension are sister motions. So I'm at 20 degrees again. Now I want you to sweep your palm across, your thumb across. And I went from 20 to 5. So how much did she move?
15.
15 degrees. She has 15 degrees of CMC flexion and 15 degrees of CMC extension. Make sense? So this is the method that I use to measure flexion and extension of the CMC joint. Because of the osteological arrangement of the bone, it is the position that to me makes the most sense. Now, you'll see some people do the same thing with abduction. And I'm not going to say that it's wrong, but I want you to look at the skeleton. If I'm looking at abduction, what is the CMC joint abducting away from? Is it abducting away from the second metacarpal, or is it abducting away from the radius? I mean, technically it's doing both, but you got carpal bones in the way here. It is more accurate to say that it is abducting away from the second metacarpal. So when I measure abduction, I put the movable arm on the mid-shaft of the first metacarpal, the stationary arm on the mid-shaft of the second metacarpal, and the axis over the trapezium. If you measure off of the radius, and that is not wrong, then you're going to put the stationary arm on the radial border of the radius, the axis over the mid-joint, and the movable arm over the first metacarpal. But to me, since this is abduction, it just makes more sense to measure off that first metacarpal. So, and again, pay attention. You can't see the metacarpals, but you can palpate them. I'm not paying attention. If you notice, see how my movable arm, my stationary arm is shooting off here? Because I'm looking at the metacarpal, not at what the phalanges are doing. Does that make sense? Okay? So, what I'm looking for is her ability to adduct into the palm. Again, this is not going to be 0. For her, can you bring your thumb all the way in? For her, it's going to be, God, I've got to start wearing glasses all the time. 21 degrees. Okay? So that's my start point. Now, if she was stuck like this and couldn't adduct her thumb, then I don't know exactly. I could measure the other side. But I would say that her adduction, I would use a minus, and I would say it was minus 30 degrees. Now, I know it's not really minus 30 degrees. If 21 is where she can get, then what is she really? She's really minus 9. But if I can't, unless I could passively get her in, and then I could say she was minus 9 degrees, because I could measure it. But if I can't passively get it in, then I'm going to use the whole number. That's my start number, okay? All right, so we're at 21 degrees, and I'm going to have her to move your thumb out that way for me. That it? Do that again. Do that again. Well, you ain't got no CMC movement. That's so sad. All right, so we went from 21 to 31. She's got 10 degrees of CMC movement. There's not a lot of movement in that joint. Again, expected 30 to 70. That's crazy. There's nowhere close to 70 degrees there. But because of the way people measure it and it not being standardized, you'll see these ridiculous numbers for CMC movement. But if we had 70 degrees of CMC movement, I mean, it'd be like way out here. I mean, it'd just be nuts.
Oh, I heard this on what? This one's
Softball?
probably normal.
Uh-huh, that explains it. All right. Questions on that?
Will you do me after class?
Will I do you after class? Sure, I'll do you after class.
Do these.
No, do my, because I need you to show me exactly.
Okay, now, the last thing I'm going to show you how to measure, because I don't want to give you too much on Monday before the test on Wednesday, is opposition. The stuff we're going to go over
Lord
on
help us.
Monday, y'all, isn't going to be much. It'll probably take 10 or 15 minutes to go over it, and then I'll actually give you time to practice and ask me questions. Opposition is a motion that occurs due to a combination of motions between the CMC, MP, and the IP joints. It is primarily the CMC joint. But if the CMC joint is not working, then the MP and IP joint will take up the slack. And you have to just kind of observe that as the therapist and see where the motion is coming from. But we look at opposition from a lot of different positions. The most common way is that these are the opposition stations. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 opposition stations. Okay? Do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 is to the distal crease. 7, 8. I said 9 is 10. I'm sorry. 9. No, 9. Did I count right? Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 9 stations.
Okay.
9 stations for opposition. Okay? 9 stations for opposition. So you can say they can oppose to station 3. They can oppose to station 4, 5. You can also take your goniometer, your little one, and you can say they lack 3 centimeters opposing to the tip of the index, to the little finger, or they lack 3 centimeters opposing to the pad of the small finger MP joint. You can also measure like this and say that they are 3 centimeters off the palm. So there's several ways to measure opposition. I use the stations.